Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to Common Sense News. My name is Doug Compton, and this is part two of the Hunter Biden slash Ukraine scandal. And the first thing I want to talk about is money laundering. Most of you know what money laundering is. It's pretty simple. It's where you have money that is not clean and you need to clean it up in order for the IRS to not look at you and the Treasury Department and things of that sort. So there was $23 million that Ukraine got of dirty money. The first thing they did, they gave that money to Cyprus. And in Cyprus, they gave it to a shell corporation. A shell corporation is basically a business that doesn't really do any business. It's used for money laundering. It's like a shell that doesn't have any gas pumps. And from there, it went to Latvia. Latvia is a country known for money laundering. You ask anyone around the world, any world leaders, they will tell you that Latvia is just a place for money laundering. A lot of dirty banks there. And Latvia, they cleaned up the money for them, and then they send the money to the UK. The United Kingdom. Well, the United Kingdom caught on to it and they froze that money. $23 million. It was frozen. Hunter Biden joins Burisma while that money is frozen. Did Joe Biden know that that money was frozen and that they were under investigation? Maybe he didn't know about Kolomoisky, the owner of Burisma, the guy that was beheading people and using chainsaws against his rival company, just an all-around bad guy. Maybe he didn't know. I doubt it. I'm sure he knew. Eventually, Kolomoisky was cleared a visa to the U.S. to open for business. Why? That's the biggest question, is why? Why would Joe Biden allow him a visa to the U.S.? That's a pretty serious question, and maybe one day we will get the answer. So, what was the motive behind this? Joe and John Kerry were lobbying $1.8 billion towards the bank, Pivot Bank, and we talked about this yesterday, or Pivot, if you use the accent, Pivot Bank. In order to unfreeze that $23 million. They lobbied $1.8 billion. Now, that $1.8 billion came from the bailout money in 2008 that was used to bail out banks here in the U.S. But apparently now we bail out banks in Ukraine as well. And eventually the money got unfrozen, and that $1.8 billion just disappeared. Where did it go? Seriously, where? If you know where, let me know. Because I would really like to know. That's a lot of money. $1.8 billion just disappeared. That's a lot. And as we talked about yesterday, Kolomoisky, God, I'm going to get that wrong every time. Kolomoisky, the owner of Burisma, and also the owner of the state-run bank in Ukraine called Pivot Bank. A month before Hunter Biden was appointed to the board of directors, Kolomoisky was appointed as a governor in eastern Ukraine. And this section of Ukraine was on the front line with the war with Russia, despite Obama not giving them military aid at all. His entire presidency, he did not give them military aid whatsoever. Kolomoisky is known in Russia as the bankroll for the war because Ukraine has no money. Ukraine is a small country. They don't have money for military aid. And that $1.8 billion that Joe Biden and John Kerry were lobbying is more money than they have ever spent on military in the entire history of that country. And Putin in Russia is aware of all of this. He knows about Kolomoisky. He knows about the things that he's done. And there was an article put out in Russia in some newspaper talking about how Kolomoisky bankrolled the war with Russia because Ukraine had no money. So he used the money that he laundered, most likely, most of it anyway, through his Pivot Bank to fund militias to start that war. And Russia is aware of that, for sure. And like I've said many times before, the main question is why? You know? Why didn't Obama give them military aid? It's almost like he wanted them to get defeated so that he can control what's going on in Ukraine. And it appears that that's what's happening with all the money laundering and all of that stuff and the complete control of the government there. And like I said yesterday, and I'm sure I'm going to repeat a lot of things that I've said over this Ukraine thing because it's important. This is the biggest money laundering scheme. This is the biggest money laundering scheme we have seen ever, and the most corrupt government that we have ever seen, and justice will be done. And if it's not, then you could say goodbye to our Constitution and you could say goodbye to this country. And that is it for today. Thank you for listening.